July 25th, 1965. America was at war.
This is really war.
A band of folk fans had gathered in Rhode Island, and history was about to be made. Bob Dylan,
here's Bob Dylan,
legendary singer-songwriter,
he was alright,
took to the stage of the Newport Folk Festival to a crowd eager to hear him play his famous acoustic protest ballads. But instead, he did this.
Try my best to be just like I am, but everybody wants you to be just like them. They say sing while you slave, I just get bored. I ain't gonna work on Maggie's farm no more.
Fans had expected to hear the soft-spoken social critic, but instead were blasted with the electric sounds of rock and roll.
Guess you guys aren't ready for that yet.
And so they were pissed.
Bob Dylan was a bastard in the second half.
And I didn't like that very much.
In Dylan's own words,
no comment.
he electrified one half of the audience and electrocuted the other. This is because the American folk scene has been long married to the political tones of protest and counterculture, at least since its inceptions with Woody Guthrie. So to ditch the acoustic guitar and pick up the electric, it was to sell out.
I think he's prostituting himself.
Now, this was almost 60 years ago, so we could easily write this off as an orthodox audience being reluctant to the changing times. But earlier this year, I kinda had my own Newport Folk Festival revisited. Like the audience that day, I too had come to define Dylan within the boundaries of the folk ballad poet heard on his earlier records. So when I heard the rock sounds of Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde, I was a little taken aback.
it's not good.
I think what I and the audiences of Newport were upset at was that Dylan refused to conform to any aesthetic boundaries. Jean-Paul Sartre, the French existentialist, once famously said, man's existence precedes his essence.
What the fuck does that even mean?
What he meant by this is that there is no essence of man, no predetermined definition of what makes a person who they are, as we are all radically and cripplingly free. And then he writes of what he called bad faith. Bad faith is a lie we tell ourselves, a way to limit ourselves from the daunting abyss which is human freedom. As if to say, I exist under this definition.
You lie to yourself to be happy, there's nothing wrong with that.
So when it comes to Dylan, I think his electric protest at the folk festival was his way of rejecting the bad faith restraints that had been thrust upon him. In a way, he was protesting the protest songs which had come to define him. The sentiment of the 60s folk movement was to challenge the presuppositions of the earlier generations. But along the way, Dylan too found he was stuck inside of similar restraints to that which they were protesting.
Well, that's the way it goes.
Albeit artistic as opposed to political.
You think you'll stick with folk rock?
I don't play folk rock.
And this is the most ironic part.
Ironic.
Dylan plugging in the electric guitar was not seen as a protest, but instead as a conformity. And I think this is a great example of how audiences define art. Not by how the artist uses their medium to express their beliefs, but in its very surface level presentation.
What would you call your music?
I like to think of it more in terms of vision music.
Bob Dylan didn't play folk music that night, but he was a folk singer.
And I don't think I'm a folk singer.
He may not have conformed to the aesthetical criteria of folk music, but he did personify the attitudes that folk was founded on, that of challenging popular conformist thought. Because as the pioneer of this protest folk put it, it's a folk singer's job to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.